Welcome to the third lecture in the series. In this session today, we will introduce ourselves to certain ideas such as what we call code switching and code mixing, and a few more similar ideas, all related to individual bilingual speakers and societal bilingual use. It's all part of bilingualism and multilingualism. In the last lecture, we introduced ourselves to how languages exist in society, in an individual, in a nation, in our nation, and so on and so forth. We talked of a number of these things, and I hope you are not overwhelmed with what we did so far. I hope you are able to follow. Today, let's see if we move ahead and look at some typical social phenomena. What happens in society when society uses language and individuals, the individual members of a society start using languages. Good. Now, when we think of bilingualism and multilingualism, you must remember that we are talking of many countries on this earth, including our own country. And therefore, when we think of multilingualism, we should have a global as well as a local perspective. This is very important for us to understand, that it can have both these perspectives. And so, let's move on. Now, bilingual research or research in bilingualism and multilingualism has been going on for centuries almost, many years, and all over the world, including our own nation. We have also bilinguals, researchers in bilingualism and multilingualism. Now, one of those things that we have found out is that there are many nations in the world which were monolingual, but gradually and progressively over centuries became bilinguals and then multilinguals for various reasons. I'll give you only one example. If you take a country like England, which was not Great Britain, some 500 years ago, it was just England, and they spoke English in pockets here and there, and that was the language of the nation, you can say. So in a way, England once upon a time was monolingual, but gradually, because of the attraction of that country, it's a beautiful country, that so many immigrants came from different parts of the world, and when they came and settled in England for their own businesses and so on, they also brought in the languages. When they brought in their languages and started interacting with the local language, English, then England became multilingual because of this two-way interaction. So, like that, America is also a nation of immigrants. There were local Americans, and gradually more and more people came from all across the globe, and America also became multilingual, and so on and so forth. You can see many examples of countries which were monolingual and gradually became multilingual. But that's not the case in our country. Our country has not been monolingual at all. At the time of unification and independence and so on, you know that we are a sovereign democratic republic, and by then already we were multilingual. And so, we say in technical words that monolingual was a norm in some countries which became multilingual, whereas in our country, multilingualism is the norm, and monolingual or monolingualism is an exception. There are very few monolinguals who have not become multilinguals, but there are any number of multilinguals in our country, and so multilingualism in our country is the norm. Norm means normal, N-O-R-M. So, in our nation, it is multilingualism which is existing all through and which has existed for years together and so on. So, we are a multilingual nation, and so it is normal to accept any number of languages in our country. That is all that it means. So, wherever we go, whatever state it is, we have our own state language, as we have said already, and similarly, and therefore, we know that different languages exist in different places, in different forms and so on. Good. The question now is, we know that our urban centers are all multilingual. How about non-urban centers? Look around you, my dear teachers. Look around, wherever you are teaching, look around you. Is your society, is your neighborhood monolingual or multilingual? Has it become multilingual now? Was it monolingual at one time? You can explore all these things, and you can see how your own school has perhaps gradually become multilingual. Not assuming that it was monolingual, but then. Now, if that is the case, how about our interior areas, tribal pockets? Are they still monolingual or have they become bilingual, multilingual? Is something that you have to ask. And if you are working in a certain geographical area, what is the language situation there? Is monolingualism there or multilingualism there? And so, this is how we try to understand the societal factors relating to multilingualism and bilingualism, multilingualism and so on. Good. So, our nation is perhaps, I do not know, you will have to tell us. In pockets it could be monolingual, just in a few places, very few places, but by and large it must be multilingual, and that must be the norm in our country and so on. So, if we talk of this, we can slightly move ahead and ask two questions. Are we born bilinguals or have we become bilinguals? Born bilinguals or becoming a bilingual? How many of you are born bilinguals, which means in your homes you had two languages or more languages? How many of you had that sort of a situation? Or were you born into a family where there was only one language spoken by all, in your surroundings spoken by all, only one, by and large monolingual? And gradually did you become a bilingual at some stage? Very interesting phenomenon. You will observe this in your classrooms also. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what you should be alert about. When you look at your children in the classroom, are they born bilinguals? You can find out. What do we mean by born bilinguals? Supposing father speaks one language and mother speaks another language, and probably somebody else, grandmother speaks some other language, the child automatically is exposed to 2 or 3 languages at home, and that is where the child is born bilingual, multilingual. And the child knows which language to use with who, which one, here, there. Party's language, grandmother's language, grandfather's language, mother's language, father's language, if they are all different, oh my God, you had it. So, that is a born bilingual. Whereas, if all of them speak the same language and the child begins to learn another language, due to some other reasons, the child is becoming a bilingual. Not that this is bad and that is good and that is bad. No, it is not that at all. It is a description of a situation. So, in your classroom, you might discover this when you check with your own students, and that is what I am trying to suggest and so on. We will move one step further. Why does someone become a bilingual? Very obvious. There can be lots of reasons and you can have your own set of reasons. But if you look at this table now, you will find some reasons that I have listed here. As you will know, for example, it could be that somebody begins to learn another language because of some necessity and so on, for example. And why does somebody become a bilingual? Maybe because of the usefulness of a certain other language. So you become a bilingual simply because it's very helpful. Whatever your mother language, home language is, it's very helpful to survive in society, and so some language becomes very useful to you, and so you learn that, including a foreign language. For example, you decide to go to Japan and therefore you learn Japanese. So you are becoming a bilingual Japanese simply because it's a useful language for use for some reason and so on. This could be one reason. There could be opportunities available in the other language. Very obvious. Could be jobs, English. And why do we learn English? Perhaps for jobs and for better jobs and higher jobs and higher jobs and so on, and therefore you want to learn a language like English perhaps. And so it could be any other language also and so on. There can be certain emotional involvement. You learn a new language because there is some emotional connection between you and the other language. You love this person who speaks German, so you learn German. There's an emotional attachment, and so you want to learn because of that reason and so on. You might want to learn a new language because of social functions. You start working, for example, you are a caterer and you work in a catering company. You learn a new language, whatever language it could be, simply because it helps you. When you are doing catering and somebody comes and asks, what is this? And you can explain it in that language. And so you learn that language, it becomes very useful to you. Or whatever it is. Any other business, you become a truck driver. And why do you become a truck driver? Because it helps you move from one place to another. So necessity, out of necessity and so on. There can be certain literary and cultural value attached to a language. For example, I want to learn Italian or Latin or French or Spanish simply because there's good literature there, or good paintings, good artwork. I'm doing a course in arts, and so I better learn a little bit of that language, this language, so on and so forth. So literary and cultural factors in that language influence your learning of that particular language. And there can be similarly so many other individual, societal, national, all kinds of reasons why you become a bilingual, which is quite obvious, and you can add your own reasons why you became a bilingual. Teachers, you became bilingual and multilingual simply because you are teaching in a school where there are children from all other languages, many languages, not just your own, but your other languages as well. And so you learned many languages simply because now you are the principal of the school, and so you should know at least some of those important languages which are there in the school. For example, just for example, and as a teacher also, you are very popular with arts, culture, school functions and things. So you might want to learn a few words, a few sentences in other languages. And so you would like to become a bilingual, a multilingual for some of these reasons as well. So there are several reasons why we become a bilingual or a multilingual, why I became a multilingual, all of you, every one of us. Now, it's very important that a society encourages people to become bilingual and multilingual. As we said, you see, some time ago, language tolerance, language maintenance, and therefore, whatever your language is as important as many other languages, and therefore you please learn more languages, so that your survival in society will be very comfortable for you and for the society also. So you don't become such an exception that nobody likes you. No, it's not that. So you are part of the society, and therefore you have also integrated with the society, social integration through language by becoming a bilingual or a multilingual. And therefore society encourages this. So in this context, I would like you to learn two new concepts, what we call code switching and code mixing. By code we mean language. So, language switching and language mixing. How does it happen and why does it happen? Normally, if you speak a language which is also my language, and when I speak to you, I know that both of us speak the same language. I also know that you know another language which I also know. So, both of us have this knowledge that we know the same similar two languages or maybe two languages for example. So, what we do is when we talk, we mix these languages, and so I use words from the other language and mix it with my speech, and you also do the same thing. We keep switching between the two languages, and depending on what we are saying, we either speak in our home language or we speak in the other language or whatever language, but since we both know that we both know two languages, both of us, we switch, and this is what is known as code switching and code mixing. This is a common phenomena in bilinguals. Only bilinguals and multilinguals can do this. Imagine I am talking to somebody who speaks only English or French, doesn't speak anything else, and I don't know French at all, but I know my language, he knows his language, and we both talk, and what can we talk? He speaks in his language, I speak in my language. Can we mix the languages? Code switch or code mix? No, we can't. And so, in a monolingual society, there is nothing called code switching or code mixing. It happens only in bilingual societies. And so, in our languages, in our speaking, when we speak, we know that you know two languages which I also know, and so we commonly code switch and code mix. Why do we do this? Simply because it's convenient, it's good, happy, nice, enjoyable, and so much fun. And if you and I know two languages which the third person doesn't know, oh, so much better. We can continue to speak in our languages. So, code switching and code mixing are typical varieties of languages which occur when two bilinguals who know two similar languages speak to one another. And so they mix and they switch. They mix in the sense that when they speak a sentence, they will mix words from the other language. Doesn't matter. And we mix in a very normal, natural, grammatically correct form, if you observe it very carefully. And because we mix the two languages so correctly, perfectly, and bring in all the grammatical features and so on, tense, verb, aspect, this and done in our mix, our communication is very smooth and continuous with it. And sometimes we use full sentences in the other language for various reasons. So, we mix and we switch, and therefore, ladies and gentlemen, understand this about code switching and code mixing. I assume that you have understood what we mean by code mixing and code switching. Now, what is very important for us to remember, teachers, is do we code mix or code switch inside the classroom? You see, there are conditions. The children know the languages you know. You know the languages that the children know. But as per some rule, administrative rule, a class has to be monolingual. If a class has to be totally monolingual, you cannot use the other language. And so there is no question of code switching or code mixing in a monolingual class. You know, all of you must have heard of what we call direct method, which said use only one language, the target language, no other language is allowed, no mother tongue allowed, and so on. Whereas there is another method called bilingual method, Professor Dodson's bilingual method, which he established in Wales, where he encourages use of two languages. Now, so there are many teachers who think, I use bilingual method. No, you don't. You are not using bilingual method. You are using bilingual approach to your teaching, not a method, not the exact method. Method is very systematic. Whereas when you mix two languages, you are using bilingual. That's all. Just an approach to your own teaching where you mix two languages. So don't say bilingual method. No, just say bilingual. My classes are bilingual. But when you mix, check, dear teachers, once again, are you mixing in a systematic manner so that there is total comprehension and understanding, or is it unsystematic? No, it will never be unsystematic. In a class, when you use mother tongue, for example, when you are in an English medium class, you will use it very systematically once again. You will be very careful. You won't use half sentence, quarter sentence, no. Unless you are giving meaning to a certain word in the mother tongue. Otherwise, if you are using sentences, all of which will be very systematic. And code switching, code mixing, therefore, is very systematic. It's always systematic. You try it out now, become conscious, and when you speak to your friends, go home and speak to your people at home, see how much of code switching and code mixing you do. You do a lot, and that will be very systematic, which is very good. That means in our society, in the Indian society, in the Indian classroom setup, the academic setup, code switching, code mixing are available, can be used, no restrictions, and in fact encouraged. For example, if you have to explain the meaning of a certain word, you will suddenly discover that, okay, you can explain it in English, no problem. Like if you also bring in a little bit of mother tongue into it, the meaning becomes quickly very clear, and therefore you bring in that kind of use of the mother tongue also in the classroom. So that apart, code switching, code mixing is once again an individual's phenomenon. It's a phenomenon of a society. In fact, in certain societies, they ask you, they'll say, why are you struggling? Speak in the other language, I understand it. And if you speak some words in this language, it's all right, you mix it, no problem, I understand. So this is how our attitude is. And so, if we move one step further, there was a German philosopher by name von Humboldt. He said that language classifies knowledge, information, organizes information, and this organization influences our thinking, and that influence on the thinking builds our knowledge of the world. Very important that language organizes information, and this organizing of information builds our knowledge of the world, and that is how we acquire knowledge. One of the reasons why a bilingual, multilingual society uses code switching and code mixing is precisely for this reason, that when building our knowledge is very difficult using only one language. Understand this very well, we mix languages. And when we mix languages, our knowledge grows faster. And when I want to explain something to you, I mix two languages so that you understand it faster, and I have also been able to explain it faster, quicker, job gets quicker. And so, to conclude this discussion, we say that code switching and code mixing is a natural, normal, rule-governed behavior in a bilingual, multilingual society amongst all its speakers. Good, very nice, good. Now, we come to the last part of this particular lecture, where, remember, some time ago we talked of cognition, and we said that cognition is very crucial in learning, and it's available with all human beings, all users of language all over the world, and things like this. And we also asked another question: can we therefore talk of something called bilingual, special bilinguals? Each person has cognition, but what about bilinguals? Do they have special two cognitions? No. Bilinguals don't have two cognitions, but they have a single cognition. But all that they have is, they have this capacity to have a good control over two or more languages. That's all. What is so special about bilinguals? That they have this capacity to have a control over two or more languages. I am now going to use one last big word. We use the word strategies. Strategies are tricks, ways of doing things. Bilinguals have these built-in strategies to use two or more languages equally effectively. Monolinguals do not have it, there is no doubt about it, but bilinguals have this fantastic capacity to use two or more languages equally efficiently. So, we are very comfortable using two languages or more languages, simply because we have this capacity in our cognition to process information, to use the right kind of strategies. What do we mean by that? For example, when I want to make a statement, or when I want to ask a question, or when I want to tell something to somebody, when I want to do all these different language functions, I know what language to use, which language to use, how to use it, and use it very effectively. A bilingual knows this, and because one is a bilingual or a multilingual, one can understand how the cognition of the other person also works, whether it is a monolingual or a multilingual, because I have myself experienced what I call bilingualism. So, if that is the case, if I know what it's all this is about, then I have no difficulty in understanding many others, and that is how we are able to survive in this world so effectively. In your class also, therefore, my dear teachers, you would like to make sure that your children who are bilinguals use their strategies most effectively. How do we say this? We say this by understanding. We know, we have a clear understanding of all the stages, steps that we have come through when we were monolinguals and gradually became bilinguals. All the barriers, all the difficulties, how many mistakes we made, whether in pronunciation or in sentence construction or use of the wrong vocabulary, and then understanding the right way of putting it, where to stop, how to use pauses, intonation, how to use all this. We have understood all these things, and we have come through lots of barriers, and because we have come through lots of these barriers so very successfully, we are very successful as bilinguals. And therefore, we understand that bilingualism is not a disadvantage. It is a big advantage which we have as bilinguals, that we can function in so many contexts, in so many societies, in so many successful ways, and therefore bilingualism and multilingualism are extremely useful concepts for us, capacities for us, and so on. And in the next lecture, we shall move into defining a bilingual. try to identify who a bilingual is and how a bilingual functions and what is special about the Indian bilingual. Is there somebody called an Indian bilingual? Thank you very much.